Just a warning on this one. This story is going to deal with suicide and mental health. If you aren't feeling up to it today, maybe give this episode a miss. And if you need help anytime, you can call Lifeline on 131114. Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Sam Koslowski.
I'm Lucy Tassell.
This week, OpenAI announced major changes to ChatGPT following another lawsuit from parents whose teenage son died by suicide. It comes as the parents of 16-year-old Adam Rain filed a wrongful death suit against OpenAI, claiming ChatGPT actively helped Adam explore suicide methods. In response, OpenAI said it will update ChatGPT to better handle what it described as sensitive situations and is working on connecting users with certified therapists. On today's podcast, Lucy and I are going to explore the growing trend of AI being used as a mental health tool, how the companies themselves are responding to a spate of high-profile cases, and explore this broader question of whether your next therapist could indeed be a chatbot.
Sam, the first thing I want to discuss is kind of the scope of this trend. Obviously, there has been this reporting on this issue over the last couple of months, but that can only tell us about isolated cases. What do we know about how common it is for young people to be using AI for mental health issues?
Well, when you and I were chatting about it this week, we didn't really have a sense either. So we did a quick poll with TDA's audience on Instagram yesterday, and it was 1 in 4 of our audience that said they have used ChatGPT or another AI model to talk about their mental health.
Yeah, wow.
And this does align with other more established research out there. There's findings from the mental health body here in Australia, Origin, which reported in 2024 that 28% of community members are actively using AI for mental health purposes.
Yeah.
But then in that study, when you look specifically at young people aged between 16 to 25, that 28% number leaps to 73%.
Whoa.
Who say they are seeking mental health guidance through social media and AI together. Young people, when asked why they're doing that, they say that it's because it's immediately available, it's 24/7, it's low cost and sometimes free, and it's more private than established mental health channels as the primary reasons for using these services.
I'm surprised by that number, but I guess I shouldn't be, given that experts are fairly frequently saying that Australia has a youth mental health crisis, right?
Exactly. So government data, national health data shows about 40% of young Australians, that's 18 to 35, are experiencing psychological distress at any one time. And of those seeking help, the Black Dog Institute says 6 in 10 are delaying booking in with a therapist because of cost, even with the 10 subsidised or free psychology sessions provided currently under Medicare.
So we know that lots of young people are having a lot of difficulty with their mental health, and we know that a good chunk of those young people who are struggling are turning to AI. Do we have any other kind of hard data about how much Australians are using AI, even just for this purpose?
Yeah, well, in us trying to establish kind of this calculation of lots of ill mental health plus frequent use of AI equals AI chatbots being used for mental health, it was important to look at how much Australians are using AI, and Australia is one of the world's most AI-addicted countries.
Wow.
So about 40% of the country uses AI now every day. That number has doubled since March of this year. So it is hard to, of course, draw definitive links between all of this, but hopefully I've kind of established a bit of kind of what the playing field looks like as we start to now dive into the case and the update that's in the news this week.
There's something else I want to know, which is how much do we know about how effective AI is? Because if all these people are using it, is there any data around, or have there been any studies into what impact it actually has?
It's been so interesting looking into the research here because, as I said, it is going so fast. And think about that number of daily use doubling since March.
Yeah, wow.
So the general sense amongst the research is basically that it's called a dangerous paradox. So AI chatbots are showing significant clinical effectiveness, but also showing that they pose serious safety risks.
Yeah.
So there's one study that keeps coming up in my research that is seen as kind of the best study so far on this.
Yeah.
It was a controlled trial of fully generative AI therapy chatbots, and it showed a 51% average reduction in depressive symptoms amongst those who used it, and a 19% reduction in eating disorder concerns. And it says that that is about the same rates as you would see in traditional human therapy. And then there was another study that found a purpose-built AI chatbot, so not your run-of-the-mill ChatGPT, but something specifically built for therapy. It could effectively reduce depression and loneliness in Chinese university students in the US who were struggling with being away from home, particularly those who were experiencing high financial stress. But in both of those studies, and this is a really important bit, both were looking at the effectiveness of custom AI chatbots that were trained on psychological data. There's not much out there actually in the research world into how people are responding when they seek mental health support in the more general products that 40% of us use every day, like ChatGPT.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't necessarily have in-depth research into how individuals are responding to these kind of general chatbots. You're sort of out of the box ChatGPT typing in, I feel depressed, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We do know, though, that there have been some pretty serious safety issues arising out of that. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so those are the studies that don't need clinical trials with humans. It can be more of an analysis on the language that it produces. And Stanford University ran a big study on the 5 largest chatbots, and they found that all 5 consistently failed to recognize suicidal intent in crisis scenarios. There's also this really interesting idea of AI psychosis emerging. And this is when users are developing delusional thinking after extended interactions with AI, particularly if the chatbots are using flattery too much.
Yeah.
So there was a researcher that said that this typically occurs in people using chatbots for hours on end, often at the expense of human interaction.
Yeah, and that kind of flattery is a really interesting point because certainly the things that I've read about or my experiences with ChatGPT specifically, it's very affirmative. It kind of wants to, it's like always playing an improv game of like yes and yes
well
and.
Done, Lucy.
And yes, and it never says no but. So you can kind of run into that issue.
And they've acknowledged that themselves. Part of the release of OpenAI's latest model was an attempt to try and lower the flattery that users were experiencing.
Yeah, but it's sort of this interesting thing where like you can't put the genie back in the bottle once everyone has been exposed to the more flattering version. You can try and kind of tone it down over time, but then there's those conversations still exist, and sometimes those harms have already had consequences, like what has brought us to talk about this here today.
Exactly.
Which is that a young person has died by suicide following lengthy conversations with ChatGPT.
Yeah. And
their parents have now launched a lawsuit. What do we know about that?
Hello, Billy here from TDA. We have just looked at our YouTube analytics and 95% of you who are watching our videos aren't subscribing. If you want to help independent media like us grow, the best way you can do that is by pressing subscribe. Thank you so much, and back to the video.
So this is a lawsuit brought by Matthew and Maria Rain, who are the parents of 16-year-old Adam, and they're alleging in court that ChatGPT actively helped their son explore suicide methods. In the evidence that they've presented in these early stages of the proceedings, they've shown conversations that Adam had with ChatGPT where ChatGPT allegedly provided instructions on the means by which Adam eventually died. And it's one of hundreds of conversations that have been produced in the court documents. And according to the documents, Adam began using ChatGPT as a homework helper, but gradually developed what his parents described as an unhealthy dependency. It's worth mentioning the system at times did offer him links to suicide helplines, but at other times it freely discussed his thoughts about self-harm.
Yeah.
And there are particularly disturbing parts of the transcript where ChatGPT allegedly offered to help him write a suicide note.
So because ChatGPT is just a language system, it can't be held at fault.
Yeah.
So who are the parents suing?
So they're suing OpenAI, which is the parent company of ChatGPT, and they've named the CEO, Sam Altman, as the responsible parties. And there was one quote that stuck out to me from the legal complaint.
Yeah.
They said, "This tragedy was not a glitch or unforeseen edge case. ChatGPT was functioning exactly as designed to continually encourage and validate whatever Adam expressed, including his most harmful and self-destructive thoughts, in a way that felt deeply personal." And the parents are now seeking damages for product liability and wrongful death.
Wow. Okay. I'll say also this is not the first time that we've heard about this, nor is it even the first New York Times story that because that's how we found out about this.
Yeah.
About this kind of case. What can you tell me about some of the other instances?
The New York Times specifically have done in-depth reporting into this. So writer Lawry recently published an essay in the New York Times that detailed how her 29-year-old daughter died by suicide after discussing the idea extensively with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And in October last year, a Florida woman filed a similar lawsuit against Character AI, another chatbot which emulates various characters from fiction.
Yeah.
Her 14-year-old son died by suicide after becoming emotionally attached to a chatbot modeled on a character from Game of Thrones. Character AI have responded to that by putting in parental controls. They did that in December of last year.
Do we know about any cases like this happening in Australia?
Yeah, and I have to highlight Triple J Hack's work in this space. They've done some excellent reporting. So last month, that program told the story of a 13-year-old Victorian boy already struggling with suicidal thoughts who received encouragement from an AI chatbot with the response, "Oh yeah, well, do it then." So real kind of active encouragement there. And a youth counsellor who was helping the teenager found that the teenager was using over 50 AI bot tabs simultaneously.
Far out. Yeah. Wow.
So it's a really multifaceted and in-depth issue. And the thing that struck me from getting across all of these individual cases was, again, that speed of development and just how fast this topic is moving.
Yeah, totally. What have we heard from OpenAI about this legal case?
So they released a blog post earlier this week, and in it said that within the next month, OpenAI will offer tools allowing parents to set limits for how teenagers use ChatGPT.
Okay.
So parents will be able to link their account with their teenager's account and control how ChatGPT responds with age-appropriate model behavior rules. We don't know the specifics exactly of how this would work logistically, but they've said that parents will receive notifications from ChatGPT when the system detects that their child is in a moment of acute distress. And the company has said that it has been working on these controls since earlier this year. In that statement, there were also some really significant admissions from the company. So they admitted that although ChatGPT is trained to direct people to seek help when expressing suicidal intent, the chatbot also tends to offer answers that could go against the company's safeguards if it's frequently messaged over a long period of time.
I see.
And it said that it's working on an update to this. It will enable the chatbot to de-escalate conversations, and they're looking at ways to actually link people in with human therapists in moments of crisis. The lawyers for the family of Adam Rain, they said in a statement that nobody from OpenAI had reached out to them yet, and they learnt about this update to the technology at the same time as everyone else. And a lawyer said, rather than take emergency action to pull a known dangerous product offline, OpenAI has made vague promises to do better.
Yeah. Wow. That is striking.
Yeah.
It's, as we've said now, this technology is just evolving so rapidly.
Yeah.
One of those developments that we know about, as you mentioned earlier, is that there are specific AI models that could be used for therapy. What kind of developments are happening in that space?
Well, there's some amazing work being done, and I thought it was important to include some of these developments because a fear of AI in the mental health space is not productive. It's clearly there, and all major research journals are doing a lot of work in developing good products. And so one of the largest ones in the world is called Wobot, and it's a chatbot developed by psychologists from Stanford. And the chatbot is specifically trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and mood tracking. And so it's quite a sophisticated model. It's getting some of those same results I highlighted earlier around similar effectiveness to human psychologists. But again, it's for a niche clientele and it's trained on niche data. And in Australia, we're now at the point where most major universities in the country are undertaking major studies that will result or already have resulted in the development of their own psychology AI products.
This whole AI space seems to me to be kind of like built on that startup ethos of move fast and break stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes the stuff that breaks can be very, very serious, but then you can also get these kind of world-changing outcomes for better or for worse.
Yeah, and it kind of does feel like at some stage in this, it will be recognized that we're all part of a quite large experiment.
Yeah.
And that we're all in this somewhat unregulated experiment in live time. I have no doubt that these general products will get safer and safer, especially with more legal action and regulatory action. But if we think about the well-being of users in the meantime, it's clear that this is quite a present risk. And until the major regulation and shifting guidance catches up almost with the way in which we're using AI products, whether they intend to be or not, at the moment, we need to think about new ways to protect the well-being of users.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for explaining that, Sam. That's all we've got time for today. Just a reminder, if you need help, you can call Lifeline anytime at 13 11 14.